ओ ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ॐ शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। ॐ श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। ॐ चिन्मयो नाम रूपस्य आनन्दो वै स्वभावतः वेदगीतासमुद्धर्ता ज्ञानयज्ञव्रते स्थितः। ॐ चिन्मयं जीवनं यस्य स्मरणं यस्य चेतना ज्ञानदानं धृतिर्यस्य तस्य पादौ भजाम्यहम्। ॐ सदिदं सकलं विश्वं नानारूपं प्रतीतमज्ञानात् तत्सर्वं ब्रह्मैव प्रत्यास्ताशेषभावनादोषम्। मृत्कार्यभूतोऽपि मृदो न भिन्नः कुम्भोऽस्ति सर्वत्र तु कुम्भोऽस्ति सर्वत्र तु मृत्स्वरूपात् न कुम्भरूपं पृथगस्ति कुम्भः कुतो मृषा कल्पितनाममात्रः। न कुम्भरूपं पृथगस्ति कुम्भः कुतो मृषा कल्पितनाममात्रः। केनापि मृद्भिन्नतया स्वरूपं घटस्य सन्दर्शयितुं न शक्यते अतो घटः कल्पित एव मोहात् मृदेव सत्यं परमार्थभूतम्। सद्ब्रह्म कार्यं सकलं सदेवं तन्मात्रमेतन्न ततोऽन्यदस्ति अस्तीति यो नास्ति न तस्य मोहः विनिर्गतो निद्रितवत् प्रजल्पः. So in our first session we saw yesterday a special consideration for the word Sat Brahma, an absolute existence with which he started, and how with the different levels of consciousness the Sat Brahma has come down to the level of names and forms. Now today we will take up the new verse number 231. ब्रह्मैवेदं विश्वमित्येव वाणी ब्रह्मैवेदं विश्वमित्येव वाणी श्रौति ब्रूते थर्वनिष्ठा वरिष्ठा श्रौति ब्रूते थर्वनिष्ठा वरिष्ठा तस्मादेतद्ब्रह्ममात्रं हि विश्वम् तस्मादेतद्ब्रह्ममात्रं हि विश्वम् नाधिष्ठानात् भिन्नतारोपितस्य नाधिष्ठानात् भिन्नतारोपितस्य ब्रह्मैवेदं विश्वमित्येव वाणी श्रौति ब्रूते थर्वनिष्ठा वरिष्ठा तस्मादेतद्ब्रह्ममात्रं हि विश्वम् नाधिष्ठानात् भिन्नतारोपितस्य is the one. Here, this is Shrauti Vani. The scriptures, the Vedas, Shruti declares. What is that? Brahma eva idam vishwam. Iti eva Shrauti Vani Brute. And what is that Vani? Atharvanishtha, Varishtha, Shrauti Vani. So this is the declaration of Shruti that indeed, truly, this entire universe is Brahman. So this is Atharva Veda, Atharvanishtha, Varishtha, Shrauti Vani Brute. So in Atharva Veda, and the reference given is Mundaka Upanishad, which we have covered this second chapter, second section. In that we have covered this word, which ends with this Brahmaivedam Vishwamidam Varishtham. This is quoted by Acharya here in the first two lines. That this entire universe is Brahman. This is the declaration of Atharva Veda. Tasmad, therefore, etad Brahma matram hi Vishwam. Etad Vishwam Brahma matram hi. Therefore, this universe is Brahman alone. Etad Vishwam Brahma matram hi. And the last line tells us the reason, a logical reasoning, why it is like this. It says, Nadhishthanat bhinnata aropitasya. Aropitasya adhishthanat bhinnata na asti. Asti is understood. So the superimposition has no existence apart from, independent of Brahman. So here now the reason given is why this world is Brahman alone, because you are saying what you are saying as the world, it is actually Brahman. Then what about this world? So it is said it is your projection, it is your superimposition on Brahman. Therefore you are saying this world. Otherwise it is Brahman only. So this superimposition by the ignorant and deluded mind is nothing other than Brahman itself. This is in short, this is the verse. Now in this, Shrauti Vani is one important term. Shruti has become Shrauti, is an adjective of Vani. The declaration, the words of Shruti. Vani, the speech, the words, the declaration. So the Shruti declares, Shruti in Atharva Ved and there in Mundaka Upanishad, which is Mantra Upanishad. In the Mantra portion of Atharva Veda, this Mundaka Upanishad has come. So this is how it is referred in Mundaka Upanishad. The statement is made. Now when we see here that the scriptures, the authority or the means of knowledge is being quoted here. Now before that, in 230, verse 230, it is a logical reasoning with which it is stated that Sad Brahma Karyam Sakalam Sadevam. So the effect is not different than the cause itself in different form. Now this is a logical reasoning. So always while asserting something which has reference to the scripture, there are two ways of asserting it. One is Nyayataha. Nyayataha means with logical reasoning, it is explained to us. And the second is Shastrataha. The second one is scripture. So these two are always, Acharya has this particular way of explaining it. He first either he will explain you first logically how it is reasonable, and then he says even Shruti also quotes like this. Therefore, his personal logical reasoning is not the only reason. The finally Shruti being the means, the only means for this knowledge. Therefore, he quotes Shruti also. So earlier he has talked about the cause and effect theory to convince us how the effect cannot be different from the cause itself. It may look different, but as such it is the cause itself in another form. So this is a reasonable argument Acharya has given, and in support of this or in continuation of this, now he is referring the Shruti, and Shruti also says this. Basically, Vedas are otherwise called as Shruti. In all our rituals, any ritual that our religion recommends for a given benefit or result, if you see the sankalpa that the priest tells us to repeat, the host also repeats accordingly. In that sankalpa, the details of sankalpa may vary, but he wants the result of this ritual as promised by the scriptures. So for this, there is a wording. Shruti Smriti Puranokta Phalapraptyartham. So that I will get the results or the benefit of this particular conducting this ritual, I'll get the results of this as promised by Shruti, Smriti, and Purana. So our scriptures mainly are constituted of these three: Shruti, Smriti, and Purana. They have a different contents of presentation. So here Shruti, if we take first, because that is the first. Shruti is the first. In a sense, Shruti is what is heard. What is heard, not what is discovered. There is no human effort involved in this. When the rishis at the seat of their meditation, contemplation, when they transcended the domain and range of I and mine, the ego sense, or likes and dislikes related to mind, then they were exposed to these words which they heard. Therefore, what they heard, they are not the authors of it. It was revealed to them. So these words were revealed to them. And all these words which are compiled as Shruti. So there it is, therefore it is not authored by any human mind or any human person. And therefore Shrutis are called as apurusheya. Purusha is the one who has got a sense of I-amness. One who has got a sense of I-amness is called Purusha. Even if it is a woman, it is Purusha. Because Purusha means one who is self-conscious and says, I am. And in this sense, the Shruti or the Vedas are revelations to the rishis when they transcended the domain and range of their I and mind. They were heard. Therefore, it is called as Shruti, that which is heard. So it is not authored by the human being. Therefore, this is one. Now, this Shruti basically contains the reality, the nature of reality. From the Shruti, we come to know as means that there is Atman, there is Brahman, and that is my nature, etc. So this important knowledge about the self, about the reality or the ultimate truth, this knowledge comes from the Shruti. It is God-given. It is not man-made. It is not created by man. Therefore, this, what is heard or revealed at the seat of meditation, is accepted as, you can say, the command of the Lord, or you can say it is the declaration which were revealed to these masters. This is one aspect. So it tells us about the knowledge of the self or the knowledge of ultimate truth. Therefore, we consider Shruti as the only means for knowledge. Now this Shruti is available in the form of words. Therefore, it is called as Shabda Pramanam as well. The Shabda Pramanam, the Shabda, the words of the Shruti are considered as Pramanam or the means. When Shruti says so, we have to just accept it as it is, and we may apply our own logical reasoning and convince ourselves that this is logically possible. And then we may further experiment by spiritual practice and come to experience ourselves what Shruti says. So this is open to the seeker, but what is declared in the Shruti is the last word on the truth or the reality. So this is the first thing. Then it is followed by Smriti. Smriti means memory. What is remembered is Smriti. So these rishis, whom had this revelations, whom had this knowledge directly revealed to them, they, remembering or being true to that knowledge, they wrote down the code of ethics for the society, so that it facilitates the people to live certain values that are recommended in the Smriti. So Shruti, if they are the knowledge received or revealed from beyond to the rishis, then the application of this knowledge for the welfare of the society was done by Smriti. So some rishis sat down, they remembered what the Shrutis are saying, and based on those basic knowledge, they introduced a set of values to be lived by individuals. So here it is the value-based treatment given to it. All procedures, how one should conduct oneself in life, in going through different stages of life, what he should do, what he should not do, etc. So these smritis are directed towards the then society for their betterment, for their welfare. So they contain certain values of life to be lived by all the human beings. And thus we have Shruti, Smriti by different rishis like Manusmriti, like Parashara Smriti. There are different rishis who have written down. Now, here, since it is addressed to the society, since they are the code of conduct based on certain values of life, therefore it follows that it is applicable to a given society. As the society changes, we will have to change the Smriti to meet the changes in the society. How we can adopt our system to suit the new changes that have come in the society. This is the job of Smriti. So we have so many Smritis, and it can be said that in view of today's changes in the society, another Smriti can be prescribed by an authority. And I believe there is such code of conduct recommended by certain organization which represents the Hindu religion, and they want to unite all Hindus together. So for them, in the new changes, in the newly changed society, they are prescribing the do's and don'ts for these new citizens. Thus, we can have another Smriti to suit the changing society, whereas we cannot compromise, or there is no need for any additional Shruti. Shruti is final, and Smriti has to follow the Shruti. Therefore, Smriti word is used. So one who writes the Smriti has to remember what Shruti has to say, and in line with that, oriented with that, he has to prescribe certain rules and regulations, certain values of life which are to be lived by all the citizens or all the members of the community. This is Smriti. So they give us the set of values. Now lastly, it is Puranas. Now Puranas are the stories of great kings who lived their life with all these values that are prescribed by the Smriti and their respected Shruti. So thus we have a demo also of what Shruti says is converted into Smriti so that it becomes an applicable code of conduct for every person. And there are ideal men in Puranas who lived those ideas in their life and demonstrated how it led to the all prosperity and led to the self-knowledge. Therefore, there is a good hierarchy of kings in Puranas. So we find the detailed descriptions like King Dilip, King Raghu, etc. So thus we can see how a total system, the scripture ensure the fundamental knowledge of the reality and the truth in the Shruti. Then if we have to gain that knowledge, we need to live a life of values. In fact, the modern psychologists define religion as a life of values. So here the set of values are prescribed by the Smriti. And then we have the ideals of kings in Puranas who lived themselves this set of values and proved in their own life that whatever is promised by the Smriti, it can become a reality in our life. So thus Shruti, Smriti and Puranas together constitute the scripture. So therefore in every ritual it is said, Shruti Smriti Puranokta Phala Praptyartham, in order that I should get the results as promised by the Shruti, Smriti and Puranas. And it is definitely, if we conduct the rituals exactly as per the discipline of the rituals prescribed in the Brahmana portion, then the result has to come. This is the promise that the scriptures give. And there are certain disciplines to be observed while conducting the rituals by the priest, by the host, and by the surrounding people who are involved in the ritual. They need to observe certain disciplines. If they follow that, then the scriptures promise the declared results of that ritual. That is why we have seen that if you want to go to heaven, yajnas are to be performed. That was one of the Smriti saying that. So, yajeta, Swarga, one who desires of Swarga, heaven, he should conduct the yajna. So, yajna is an activity which is selfless, dedicated for the welfare of the society. Any activity that you perform, this is Gita's restatement about yajna. Otherwise, when it talks about 12 yajnas in 4th chapter, it was not expected that Arjuna will sit down there in the war front and he will conduct the yajna. It is not that ritual. Yajna is recoined by Gita, saying that any activity selfless, dedicated for the higher purpose, for the welfare of society, for the nation, for the humanity, is considered as yajna. So it should be other than selfish activity. Therefore, selfless, dedicated activity, dedicated for the higher purpose other than the egoistic. So this idea gives us about yajna. So if you want to conduct a particular ritual, its results are also declared that if you conduct it by proper procedural manner, then you must reach this result. This is declared by the Shrutis or scriptures. Therefore, here when we say Shrauti Vani, it is the declaration of the Shruti. And Shruti is the authority, the right appropriate means to declare the truth or the reality. Here the truth declared is that Brahma eva idam vishwam. This is the declaration of the Shruti. Brahma eva idam vishwam. iti eva Shrauti Vani. Which Vani? Atharvanishtha Varishtha Vani. So this is the statement where this declaration of that this Brahman is supreme. Say Varishtha, when it is a, though it is related to Vani basically. So Brahma eva idam Vishwam is the declaration of Shruti, and that is Atharva Veda. And in Atharva Veda mantra portion, that is Mundaka Upanishad. In Mundaka Upanishad, here it is the second chapter and the second section and the 11th mantra. Those attending Meera Satsanga, they will be reminded about this mantra. Brahmaivedam amrutam purastat Brahma pashat Brahma dakshinatashottarena adhashordvam cha prasrutam Brahmaivedam vishvamidam varishtham. So the last quarter of this mantra is quoted here by Acharya, saying that Shruti herself says that Brahman, this world is nothing but Brahman. So this is the first declaration. Now here the word Vishwam has come. Why it has to be stated that this world is also Brahman? Because the nature of Brahman and the appearance of the world are totally contradictory. Brahman is one without a second. Here it is many and variety. Brahman is eternal. Here it is ephemeral or perishable. See the difference? This is totally a different thing. That's why last time it was, in the last verse it was said, if you say something else is also there, then you are only talking in the sleep. Yeah, it's a twaddle in the sleep. So this was said because it is now in this verse only we will be given the reason why he is saying that a world is something different than Brahman that he is experiencing, and Brahman he has not experienced it. He doesn't know also, but the world he knows. He is interacting with the world to some extent. He knows the world, and this being the contradiction in their apparent nature, the world as appears and the Brahman as declared. Brahman is the truth, eternal, and this universe is not other than the Brahman. This is the declaration of the Shruti. So here the idea of Vishwam, when it is said, there are different theories of creation. Whatever may be the theories, how this creation has come to be, the very fact that there are more than one theories for creation of the universe itself means none of them can be 100% perfect theory. That is clear. So it is presented by the teacher as an in-between solace for the student in his curiosity about the world. So different, the theories are in different Upanishads, not a one Upanishad telling 2-3 theories. Each Upanishad or each teacher will give him some reasonable story or theory about the creation. And there are so many, and we cannot afford to go, of course, through all those. And Gaudapada Acharya has detailed out in so many details, it is too much. Therefore, we cannot afford. But at least the main important considerations we have to go with and take into account when here it is said that idam Vishwam Brahmaiva. So this Vishwam, one theory is called the theory of creation. It is called as Arambhavada. Arambhavada, we see in this world, there is a time when the things appear to exist. There is a time when they continue to exist for some time, and there is a time when they disappear. They cease to exist. So seeing this, it is logically thought of that the entire creation also must have started at some time. Entire creation started with basic elements, etc., must have a beginning. Now, this is the first thing. We will have to appreciate the development of human intelligence in causation. Here, it is said that, like everything has a beginning and an end, similarly, this creation also must have a beginning and also must have an end. There must be some dissolution of this universe. So this is the first level of thinking, a starting level. And then finally, having come to this understanding, what they advise the people is, why should you bother about when this creation is started, why it is started, who has started, and all that. Forget all that. So long as you are alive, work to get maximum happiness from this world. This was their advice. After discovering this thought that this creation must have a beginning and an end, and they advise, don't bother about when this creation has started and all that. Don't waste your time. As long as you are alive and as long as there is creation, you interact with the surroundings and get the maximum happiness from it. This is called the theory of creation or Arambhavada. Then the Sankhya's went further and they said, no, it is not enough to assume that the creation is just started and it will end. Why it is started? There must be some reason for that. So the Sankhya's came with the theory of cause and effect, and they said everything in this world must have a cause. The things do not just happen, they are caused. Therefore, this idea, a theory of evolution, or you can call it as Mayavad or Parinamavad, this is the second step of development of human thinking. So now the Sankhya, earlier those Vaisheshikas thought that there must be some beginning of the creation and there will be end. Then the Sankhyas, these philosophers, they think, no, it doesn't just start and end. Why it started? It must have some purpose. So everything in this world must be caused. What is the cause of that? And this thing is only the effect of that cause. So this cause and effect theory is called as Parinamavad. Parinamavad means that which results in something and that result doesn't fall back to the original, is not able to fall back to the original. It is modified now. The cause is modified. We have already seen the laws. The effect is nothing but cause itself in different form. So the different form is important. It is called Parinamavad. This means that in case the milk is fermented, it becomes curds. Now curds cannot go back to become milk. This is Parinama. Once it has affected into curds from the buttermilk and the milk, then thereafterward it can go back to its constituent factors. Then the curds when changed, it becomes butter. Butter cannot go back to become curds or buttermilk. So likewise, this Maya is, yesterday also I touched this point that to satisfy the intellectuals, it is said that Maya is the cause of this universe. Maya, the pure knowledge, etc. Chit is the cause of this. So here also they say that there must be some main cause, and that cause has later on modified itself into different effects, and this process or link of cause and effect came down finally to these different forms. And then there are procedures like Panchikarana, etc., by which they tell us how it is. So now here it is that Parinamavad tells you that all these things are inert. What we see at present as the effect. The effect is that all these forms by themselves are inert. And those forms which are living, alive, they are alive because of some power. Without power, the inert and insentient cannot look like a living thing. So they discovered that the power must be responsible for this. And there are so many powers in the world, right from the power that earth has got, like earthquakes, etc., various powers. There is a power of in the water, there is a power in the fire, heat we can call it, light, and there are several powers like that. Then they discovered that all these powers must be in the beginning one original power. And these philosophers named this power as Maya. Therefore, this Maya has become the power and the cause of the entire universe. Up to this, Sankhyas have worked out, but then further we have to evolve. When man thinks further that, okay, Maya is the power which rules over the universe, which has become as a result of all these causes, the universe. This power by themselves, now see the evolutionary thought, the powers by themselves are blind. They are not conscious. Therefore, somebody must be wielding that power. That somebody must be some intelligence, some intelligent being. So some people call them as the Lord of Lords, some call them as Ishvara, Parameshwara, etc. And they say that Parameshwara wields his power called as Maya. And then we find in Gita also, Daivi Hesha Gunamayi Mama Maya Duratyaya Mamevaye Prapadyante Mayametam Tarantite. So this Maya is my divine power, Daivi Yesha Gunamayi of Trigunas, of Sattva Guna, and later it becomes Trigunas. This Gunamayi Maya, Duratyaya, it is very difficult to cross over. But those who surrender to me, they are saved from this power of influence of Maya. Mamevaye prapadyante Maya metam tarantite. This is Lord himself declares. This is the new development, further development in the thought that if we surrender to the one who wields this power, then we will be taken care of. Then we will not be under the influence of this power Maya, and we will be saved from the evils that we are now due to Maya. Maya has made us feel that this world is real. Avidya has made us feel that we are the body. And thus, the body with sense organs have come in contact with the world of objects, and the interaction has started. And as a result of his past actions, the individual is suffering due to these experiences. So, because we are subject to these various types of suffering, sorrows, etc., to go beyond this and save ourselves, we must surrender to the Lord, who is considered as omnipotent, all-powerful. He has got all the powers and he wields them according to what he thinks as right. So this idea is the next evolution, and therefore this Mayavad or Parinamavad or the theory of evolution has then further given rise to the next one. Next one is the theory of illusion. Theory of illusion. So this theory tells us that the entire universe is only an appearance, it is not real. This is an illusion projected by the deluded mind under the spell of avidya or ignorance. So when the ignorant individual, under the influence of avidya, the mind gets deluded, and this deluded mind projects the world, and it is projecting all illusions. The deluded mind projects the illusion. Therefore, this world is as it is an illusion. And Brahman alone is the reality. So this kind of thing is called as Vivartavada, a theory of superimposition or Vivarta. And it is this theory that is quoted here, that Aropitasya adhishthanat bhinnata na asti. This is an evolved thinking of Vedanta, that whatever world of names and forms of multiplicity and variety that we are seeing is only an appearance. When Ramakrishna Paramahamsa touched Narendra, touched his head, and he was damn frightened. And he said, "What are you doing to me?" He was very much frightened. He just gave him the sample of what is God. When he was asking whether you have seen the God, he said, "Yes, I have seen it. As I am seeing you, I have seen the God as well." And when he started arguing, etc., then he touched his head and he got that experience which our Swamiji has got when he met Ramana Maharshi for the first time. And he described it as electrifying experience. Ramana Maharshi just looked at him, and his look totally changed his within. He was totally a new person as though. And he described later that it was an electrifying experience. But being a very young man and was not, he was really a sort of atheist. Therefore, when he came out, he consoled himself. This is all, it was a mesmerizing, and under that spell, he felt like that. It is not like that. And when he later went to Swami Tapod Maharaj, after he got initiated from Swami Shivananda to sannyas, and on his recommendation, he approached Swami Tapod Maharaj for further studies. Then there, after the studies, when he was practicing what he has learned with a little hut by the side, and at the seat of meditation, he got the experience which reminded him that electrifying experience that when he was with Ramana Maharshi. Earlier, Swami Tapon Maharaj also met Ramana Maharshi, and when this man later on went there, he inquired about Tapan Maharaj, but he did not show that acquaintance with or Swamiji, but he immediately inquired about Swami Tapon Maharaj. Now this, what we are saying at this moment is, this kind of experience that our Swamiji had from Ramana Maharshi by just a glance that he had, same experience the Narendra Datta, he had when his teacher, the Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, he put his hand on his head. that experience, Swamiji says, has lasted for about 15 days. And how he describes that experience, he says he used to walk in the streets, and there were so many things and beings that he comes across, and he went past through them, and he did not have any jerks or any feeling of solid material. They were like, it was like going through a mist where there are different forms. So a buggy will go, that Victoria type of Tanga, and that will go. He will go through that, but he will not feel any sense of jerk. So this experience lasted for some 15 days. You can see the power of that person of realization. And this kind of experience, it is that we are talking about. Now, this is possible only when we see the third evolved thought that the world is illusion. For the jnani, he can pass through all that. In spite of all these names and forms, he is well established in pure consciousness. So he doesn't see anything other than pure consciousness when he is looking at the different forms. So the forms are only for the namesake. They don't have any solid contents. How we have come to experience these solid things, etc., is a different matter of consideration. But here, when it is said that the world is an illusion, they are mere forms. As here it is said, then what about the pot? He said it is mithya, it is for the namesake. Namesake means just a name, it doesn't have any content other than the mud. So this kind of thought is evolved in theory of illusion, or what is called as, they are given 2-3 names to it. It is called the theory of, the Abhasavad, one, illusion, theory of illusion. I've used some other term just now. So Vivartavad is the technical term for that. Vivarta and Parinama, these two things are worth considering. In Parinama, an original thing gets modified into the recent effect. Vivarta is also effect, but it is an effect without disturbing the original. Original remains as original. For instance, if it is a rope as a reality, without undergoing any modification on the part of rope, a snake is projected. Whereas, when we find the butter, already the milk has undergone so many modifications and now it is not possible to go back to the milk. It is permanently an effect has caused. So, this is the difference between Parinamavad and Vivartavad. In Vivartavad, the substratum remains untouched and remains free from any modification, and yet the appearance is projected by, of course, the deluded one, the ignorant one. So when somebody projects or superimposes a serpent on the rope has not undergone any change. Rope has not become serpent. Rope appears as serpent for the one who sees that. And because the reason for that is, there is some concept in his mind that in these areas the serpents abound, one concept. So he is basically scared, he is going very carefully, and suddenly he steps over the rope. Now that concept of serpent is projected on the rope, and the roughness of that is interpreted as the bite of the snake. And so many such superimpositions are projected, but the rope does not go any undergo any change. Now, this is the case of vivarta. Both are effects of the cause, but in one case, the cause gets modified into effect. Therefore, we call it as parinamavad, or the theory of evolution. Like even from a unicellular amoeba, now it has become a multi-series or cells human being. Now, human being cannot go back to amoeba. It is an evolution. Now, this is just what Darwin has thought of. We are not, Vedanta doesn't accept this Darwin theory of evolution, because we have never come across a monkey generation giving birth to a human being. We have never seen this transition anywhere. But leave aside that, here what we are saying is the cause itself gets modified into effect in Parinamavad, which is called as theory of evolution. And the theory of illusion, Vivartavad or Abhasavad, is that where it is only Abhasa or appearance, the appearance on the substratum does not affect the substratum at all. So when it does not affect the substratum, then it is called as merely an appearance or illusion. So this is Vivartavad. So this is the fourth one. And here that is quoted, that superimposition of the world, here it is, it cannot be different from the substratum on which it is superimposed. Now Brahman is the substratum and world is superimposed on it. Now snake is not different from the rope. The rope is seen as snake. By seeing it as snake, rope has not become snake. Rope remains as rope. Therefore, we can say that snake cannot be different and independent of rope. Because there is a rope, that means something is there which resembles like a serpent, all right. Therefore, he could project on that. Suppose it was a space. In space, you cannot project a serpent. There must be something similar to that, resembling that. Then you can project your ideas on that. So similarly, Brahman is the substratum, the absolute existence, eternal existence, on which a superfluous, perishable existence of serpent is projected or superimposed. Now this serpent was not there before the rope was seen, and serpent will go off the vision moment he realizes it is the rope and not a serpent. Therefore, the ignorance of the substratum gives rise to the delusion in the mind of a viewer, and this deluded mind projected the illusion of the serpent. So this is the theory where it is said the world is nothing but Brahman only, because world is only your projection. You do not know, because you do not know the substratum. Moment you know the substratum, you will also say it is only an appearance. So this is declaration of Shruti, and therefore it is the means of true knowledge. So we have to accept the statement as the statement of truth, and then accordingly this theory of superimposition or Vivartavad is applicable. Now, to complete this line of thinking to the ultimate, it is the last theory is the theory of no creation. Gaudapadacharya in Mandukya and Karika, he interprets. Now, if you say illusory, then why count it at all? Then there is no such world at all. Why say there is a world but it is illusory? Why say? Say that there is no world as such. So no creation. This is called Ajatavada. Ajata, never created, never born. So the world is never created. Why you say there is a world and then Then you say it is the effect of the cause. Then you say, no, it is not effect like Parinamavad, but it's only a superimposition on that. Then the height of this is reached, which we will not try to reach. These philosophers have reached this height where they say that there is no creation at all. It is your imagination that there is creation. There is no creation. So we started with the theory of creation and now landed with the theory of no creation. And in between, there is an evolution of thought. This is how we can come to the Upanishad and appreciate at least these last two, the theory of superimposition, Vivartavad. We have to, as far as the Maya onwards is concerned, we can apply the theory of evolution, Parinamavad, because it is Maya which keeps on modifying itself to become name and form. But as far as Brahman is concerned, there is no such thing. Maya is not independent creator of this creation. Maya is inseparable, inherent power of Brahman. And therefore, even if it is created, if say, Brahman is the cause, the credit goes to Brahman as the cause of the universe. So, Upadana Karanam, what we say, credit is not given to Maya, because Maya is not independent power. It is dependent upon Brahman. So it is Brahman's inherent power, inseparable from Brahman. Therefore, the credit goes to Brahman as Upadana Karanam. And the credit is given to Maya as Nimitta Karanam. So Maya, the pure knowledge, the Chit aspect, becomes the instrumental cause, or what is called efficient or intelligent cause, and the Brahman existence becomes the material cause. So material cause and efficient cause, this is one level. So from this we can say Parinamavad, Vivartavad and Ajatavad are the three levels of thinking. These are the theories related to creation. Here we can say that this theory of superimposition or Vivartavad is applied here when it is said Aropitasya, that which is superimposed, Aropitaha, Aropitasya Vishwasya, we can add that Vishwasya, Aropitasya Vishwasya. So the world that is superimposed, Bhinnata na asti, is not different from what? Adhishthanat. Adhisthana is the very substratum on which it is superimposed. So if somebody superimposes or projects the ghost vision on post, post does not undergo any change, and the ghost vision will end the moment he realizes the post. So ignorance of the post made the delusory mind to superimpose the illusion of ghost, and the moment he comes to know the substratum, the post, the ghost vision will disappear. So it has a beginning and an end. It only thrives when the individual is under the spell of ignorance. So this was the point here. This is the reason given that Aropitasya Adhishthanat Bhinnata no asti. This is the reason. Therefore, on this basis, what Shruti says is correct. Shruti says, even this Vishwam is also Brahman. Meaning, if you see Vishwan as different from Brahman, there is a reason for it. And the reason is, it is a superimposition by the deluded mind under the influence of avidya, that it projects the universe and it projects on the substratum of Brahman. Brahman is the eternal existence. It is all-pervasive existence. So wherever you project, it is only Brahman, and your projection is your imagination. So this idea is basically indicated here. We have seen incidentally the different theories of creation. the theory of creation, the theory of evolution, then the theory of superimposition, and theory of no creation. Minimum theories we have seen to have a quick sweep over the very many theories of creation. We only selected these four. And in this, the last but one is applicable here, the theory of superimposition or Vivartavad. So whatever is the Vivarta, it is actually, it's a misunderstood by the viewer. The Brahman is misunderstood by the viewer as world. This was the idea. Tasmad, third line says, therefore, Tasmad etad Brahma matram. Tasmad, therefore, is not applicable to the fourth line. It is the third line and applicable to the second line. Shrauti Brute. Shrauti Vani Atharvanishtha Varishtha Vani Brute. Because the Shruti says this, therefore. So here it is Shruti Pramanya. This comes that Shruti is the only means for us to know the knowledge. So Pramana is the means. We have already seen this elsewhere. There is a triad of Pramata, the knower, Prameya, to be known, and Pramanam, the means of knowledge. So when I see something outside as forms and colors becomes Prameya, the perceiver becomes Pramata, and the eyes becomes Pramanam. Only with eyes I can see the colors and forms. I cannot put my ears and see the forms and colors. Therefore, for everything there is a proper means. I can see forms and colors only by my eyes. So by eyes, when I say, it is instrumental case, and this Pramana is the means. By means of eyes, I see forms and colors. By means of ears, I listen to the sound. So like the instrument for knowing the knowledge. Now the outer world, the knowledge of the outer world, the perception of the outer world is perceived through 5 different means for sights and sounds, etc. to be perceived. So this particular knowledge, there is a definite means. This means in Sanskrit is called as Pramanam. So Pramata, the knower, Pramanam, the means of knowledge, and Prameyam, that which is to be known. Now what is the result of this? The result of this is knowledge. For knowledge there is a word Prama. Prama is knowledge. To gain that knowledge, to be gained is called as Prameya. It can be gained through instruments called as Pramanam, and the one who gains is called as Pramata. So this triad is there. Now in case of the knowledge of Brahman, the ultimate truth, Shruti, the Vedas in general, and that of Upanishads in particular, Vedanta in particular. But since the Upanishads are there in Mantra portion also, Brahman portion also, Aranyaka portion also, Brihadaranyaka and all that. So therefore, entire all Vedas becomes the means for the knowledge of ultimate truth. So this is because in the second line says, Shrauti Brute Tharvanishtha Varishta. Therefore, Tasmat, Etad Brahma Matram Hi Vishwam. Because Shruti says, and Shruti being the only means for knowledge about Brahman, and when Shruti says that this world is Brahman, therefore this world is Brahman. Yesterday I referred to the Shruti Pramanya Buddhi. If one develops this Buddhi, this is the attitude of accepting Shruti statements as true with faith, and then he also listens to the teacher or master who expound these scriptures, because scriptures are only in the word form. It is Shabda Pramana. But Shabda Pramana, Shabda by itself doesn't speak. If I use one word, chain, one word as chain, then the ladies may remember the gold chain. A physical scientist may remember the chain reaction. See, the word can give rise to any ideas, depending upon what is your background and what are your ideas about a given word. Therefore, how to interpret that word? The first task of the teacher is to handle the terms and terminology in the scripture. What is Atma? Atma is self. What is self? Self is pure consciousness, infinite consciousness. This is not the way to explain. Atma has to be explained first as the word Atma. Then you can go to the next word. So the teacher handles the term first before using those terms in his expounding. So this idea is important, that the words of the Shruti are first handled for the student. They are expounded, explained first. Then he uses those terms. Without explaining the terms and terminology, we can see in all our textbooks of science, etc., the first chapter is dedicated to terms and terminology, the definition. Similarly, here also the teacher's first task is to handle these terms of the scriptures and then use those terms while explaining the scriptures. Therefore, there is no misunderstanding about any given word, because I may use the word with certain concepts of the scripture and the student may misunderstand that. Then the purpose is not served. The communication will not be 100%. He will take the wrong message. So this idea is very important here. When you say Shruti Brute, Shruti says this. When Shruti says this, if you cannot understand, then perhaps you may need to know what each term means. Therefore, today we saw at least what is the word Shruti means, what is the reference of Shruti with reference to Smriti and Purana. But together they form a system, a truth or knowledge, the values of knowledge, values to be lived in our life so that we know the truth, and the ideals of the people who lived those values and demonstrated in their life that they reach the reality. So this whole system is foolproof. And when we say Shrutayaha Pramanam, the Shruti Vedas aspect is Pramanam in this. Since it is Pramanam, the appropriate means, our job is only to get to know the means properly. We must study the scriptures properly without any ambiguity, and each term used is understood for a given shade of meaning only. So this idea is here important. So incidentally, with a reference to Shruti, we discussed Shruti, Smriti and Purana. And with reference to Vishwam, we discussed the various theories of creation, from theories of creation to theories of no creation. And finally, we say that Shruti is the only means for us to say about the truth, to explain, to define about the truth. And lastly, in the fourth line, we are given the logical reason for this. The logical reason is that a superimposition cannot be independent and different from the substratum. The bhinnata is important, that it does not have independently exist. Superimposition has no existence independent of its substratum. Because there is a substratum, he can at least project his own ideas on that. If there were no substratum, There is no question of any imagination. Some base has to be there to project, like we require a curtain to project the movie. Similarly, there has to be some permanent thing to project on. And Brahman as the existence, eternal existence, serves as a substratum to project upon whatever ideas you have got. So Brahman has no issue at all. He says, whatever you understand and you suffer. If you understand the substratum as it is, definitely you are emancipated from all these troubles due to duality and multiplicity. So this point is clear here. Then we saw the relationship between the earlier verse and this verse. The earlier verse, Nyayataha, by logical reasoning, the earlier verse says that cause and effect relationship, that the cause as such here, since it is, the effect cannot be different from the cause. The cause is, effect is nothing other than the cause itself. This is Nyayataha. And now here it is Shastrataha. By scriptural support, here it is said that scriptures also say like this, that this world is Brahman. Therefore, this being the authority on scripture, we have to accept. But it is not said that just because it is a authority, therefore you should accept the scriptures. Again, the theory of creation, theory of superimposition is quoted here, saying that you have superimposed your world on Brahman, and this world cannot have any independent existence apart from Brahman. Therefore, world is nothing but Brahman itself, as misconceived by you. Now, lastly, this is too difficult to understand immediately, that the whole world is only illusion. So, Acharya doesn't accept in a sense fully the idea of illusion. Acharya presents for us, the students, 3 levels of reality. He doesn't say, if you cannot understand world as illusion, forget about it. There is no such thing. He introduces to us, see the kindness of that person. He offers the step-by-step exercise. He says there are 3 sattas, the reality. Now you must remember, the first is called as Paramarthika Satta, the ultimate truth. Then second is called as Vyavaharika Satta, a transactional reality, which we are in now. And the third is called Pratibhasika Satta. This is illusory. So illusion, he compares it to like a dream. So he says that Samsara Swapna Tulyo hi Atmabodh. Samsara Swapna Tulyo hi Ragadveshadi Sankulaha. Swakale Satyavat Bhati. Prabodhe Sati Asat Bhavet. When he wakes up to the higher reality, then he will falsify the lower. So we don't expect, it is not expected by Shankaracharya for us to dub this entire world as illusion and forget about it. We will not get anything out of that. He allows you to accept the world for transactional reality because there is a consistency in your transaction, not like dream. You can do a given job today and tomorrow you can continue from whatever you have done already, continue the new steps for that. In the dream, it is not like that. Like a TV serial, you cannot continue your dreams on the next night also in continuation, because they are all imaginations of the mind, not supported by discrimination. It is not supported by the thinking faculty. That is why when the person gets up, he falsifies the dream. Why? Because he said, I am comfortably lying in the bed, and how the hell I went to UK and saw the famous museum there, and I traveled for so long. He thinks over. He said, I never went anywhere. I was comfortably in the bed. Therefore, it is mind's imagination. And when he thus discriminates between mind and ego, see, this is important, mind and ego, when he discriminates, he says, I don't approve because I don't have the experience of having gone there. I'm still here only. If mind has projected some idea, it is only imagination of the mind, and therefore he falsifies. Now, Acharya don't expect us to falsify this world as ego. Ego cannot falsify the world. So long as the ego I is there, the you, he, she, it, and they all constitute the world will also be there. And he accepts that transactional reality. He does not reject that. He says, as you are waking from the dream, you falsify the dream. Now let the ego wakes up to its original nature as the self, and there he will falsify even the Vyavaharika Satta. It was all a dream, another dream, a rather longer dream. Samsara hachi dirgha swapna, says Ramdas Swami. Lobhe vosanati jana, maji kanta, maje dana. See, this is what Ramdas Swami has said. And our Adi Shankara says in Atma Bodh, Samsara swapna tulyo hi. It is as good as dream, perhaps a longer dream. This samsara, the present transactional reality of the world, is a bit longer dream. It may last longer if you continue to be in your self-ignorance. Then even if after this life also you will have another lives, any number of lives, so long as Mr. Ego rules the inner equipment, inner within. So long as ego does not take efforts to see its source, the truth behind him, till then he will continue to get lost in this world and come to suffer. Ego never knows what is peace or silence. Ego doesn't know what is real happiness. So this idea, see, the Adi Shankara has a concern for the student, and he accepts these three sattas ruling over the individual. Pratibhasika satta is in the dream world. So all dreams are only appearance, illusions, imagination, or projection of the mind on the Sat Brahma, the Sat existence aspect in himself. He projects on that, mind projects on that existence its own dream world. But it is falsified by Mr. Ego when it is on waking up. Now, another level, ego has to rise so that reaching that level is of the self. I am of the nature of pure consciousness, Atma Chaitanya, and it is in my presence, Atma Chaitanyam Ashritya Dehendriya Manodiyaha Swakriyartheshu Vartante. So he says, when he comes to know that, I am actually the self-consciousness. And in my presence, the body, mind, and intellect are vitalized and they are able to perform their function. Who the hell this ego has come in between? And then the ego is falsified. By whom? By the self-consciousness, Atma Chaitanya. So unless the ego realizes himself to be of the nature of self-consciousness or pure consciousness, he will never falsify this waking world. And let him not. It is told to him that if you refuse to understand your true nature, you will have the penalty of going through so many lives. Each life is full of limitation. at least man has to some extent ruled over some limitations of nature and is relatively trying to live a comfortable life. But other creatures are subject to really, so to say, a misery because they are subject to the attacks or impulses and instincts, and they act and react, and therefore they pass through that life helplessly without initiating any self effort. There is no chance for self improvement in other than human beings, less about creatures. Whereas for the human beings, because of his intellectual discriminative capacity, he can discriminate and see the source of this I amness. And when he reaches the self, he will say that the entire world is a projection of this egoistic individual through deluded mind. So it is all illusion, and he will falsify the whole thing. Therefore, in the consciousness, there is no world. In the pure consciousness, there is no world. So he will say there is no creation at all. But it is from the standpoint of pure consciousness, not at present. At present, we need to first learn about the nature of consciousness, the self. Then we need to study and reflect upon the scriptural statements and the teachings of our master and study them well, reflect on them, and then if necessary, we have to contemplate on them as well, and then we will understand. Moment we realize this, that very moment, the world will become apparent. Now for Jnani, it is not that he will not see the world. Since he has also got the sense perception, organs of perception, he will also see the world. But he will say, in spite of all these names and forms, I know for certain that this is only the expression of consciousness. So he will not be disturbed by anything that is happening in this relative world or Vyavaharika Satta. He will not get disturbed at all by anything that is happening in Vyavaharika Satta because he is now set in Paramarthika Satta. So this is a great difference between no creation and superimposition. And before superimposition, the cause and effect, Parinamavad. So Parinamavad, as far as the world is concerned, we can reach up to the power of Maya and we can say that this power is the cause for the entire universe. Otherwise, all these forms are inert and insentient. It is this power which makes them move. And then the evolved thought is, even this power is by itself not conscious. Therefore, and power by itself doesn't control anything. It has to be controlled by somebody else. That must be an intelligent being, and that intelligent being is the cause. And maybe process can be explained, but we need to know that this intelligent being, it is who wields this power, and the power in its turn creates the universe, and on other side creates the individual sense, and thereby helps help the individual to transact the world and gain his experiences. Otherwise, one who evolves or evaluates his own experiences and guided by the scripture and teaching, definitely he will come out of it. And that is what we are trying to realize the theme of this camp. All manifestation, absolute. Absolute is Sat Brahma. And the manifestation is the names and forms of variety and multiplicity. So we'll continue this discussion for the next camp. Almost this verse is covered, 231, and we'll proceed for the next in our 9th camp. For the time being, now we will stop here. And is there anything that anyone wants to ask?
Guruji, we said ego cannot falsify the world, and then we say ego is falsified by the self. So ultimately, what falsifies what? Does the world ever get falsified really, or is it just that the self falsifies the ego and then automatically the world gets falsified?
Yes, that's a good question. There's a link between ego projecting the world and considering it as real, and the self falsifying the ego, right? In between, there is a gap. The ego is an ignorant fellow, and the pure consciousness is the reality. Okay. In between, there is a jidnyasu, the one who desires to know. There are four basically motivating tendencies in us, or thoughts in us, vrittis. Four. We want to acquire something, or we want to get rid of something. These are two. Secondly, the first thing is called as prepsa. Prepsa is a vritti which motivates to acquire something. We acquire money, power, name and fame. We want to get so many things from the world. So this is called prepsa. Then another thing is some of the things we want to get rid of and give up. It is called jihasa. So praptamicha prepsa. Tyaktumicha jihasa. Then we want to do something and achieve something. Act to achieve. So what is that called as? Anyone remembers? It is called as chikirsha. Kartumicha chikirsha. And the last vritti is jidnyasa. Jnatumicha jidnyasa. If the seeker develops and fans up this jidnyasa for his own self, what is this? Who is this I? If he really takes up this inquiry, then it is only the jidnyasu who will become jnani, nobody else. Only jidnyasu becomes jnani. That's why of all the four devotees, Gita says, so Artha and Artharthi cannot reach the reality because they want something to get rid of their sorrows, Artha. And Artharthi, they want to get something. So Prepsa and Jihasa, they are stuck up there only. Only Jidnyasu will become Jnani. These two types of bhaktas he has accepted, but they are not different. Jidnyasu himself becomes Jnani. Therefore, the step in between that we did not cover is this, that from ego, if the egoistic individual really has a spirit of learning, and if his attention by his fortune or by his good merits, if he comes across the teacher and the scripture, then that interest will be fanned up in him to know who is this I. And if he pursues that, cultivates that interest, and abides by all the discipline that is expected by this path, then definitely Jidnyasu is bound to become Jnani. When he becomes Jnani, he will falsify the ego. He will not recognize the ego at all. Simply, ego cannot survive. In fact, the ego disappears into that reality. That is that. So Jidnyasu is the point in between. So we saw four vrittis which are motivating individuals to acquire something, to give up something, to do something, and to know something. Yasya prasadadahamev Vishnuhu मय्येव सर्वं परिकल्पितं च इत्थं विजानामि सदात्मरूपं तस्याङ्घ्रिपद्मं प्रणतोऽस्मि नित्यं तस्याङ्घ्रिपद्मं प्रणतोऽस्मि नित्यम् ॐ श्री चिन्मय सद्गुरवे नमः।